Good afternoon and welcome to this week's Post-Executive Council Media Briefing. I'm Davia Chambers and I will guide you through this afternoon's press conference. Joining us to address the media today are Chief Secretary Tobago, Honorable Farley Augustine, and the Secretary of the Division of Legal Affairs, Councillor Adana Joseph Wallace. Addressing us firstly is Chief Secretary, Honorable Augustine.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chambers. Good afternoon, Tobago. Good afternoon, those of you who are viewing from around the island, around the country, and around the world. We are here today, certainly still coming to terms with what occurred in Tobago at our famed Pigeon Point yesterday afternoon. And so we wish to address matters related to that as far as is possible, given that this is a current and active police investigation. The truth is, over the past few weeks, Tobago actually experienced one of its strongest Easter periods in recent years. And this was marked by high visitor activity, vibrant community engagement, and a clear momentum within the tourism sector. However, even as we acknowledge that success, we must also address the reality that this period is being overshadowed by a deeply tragic incident. Yesterday, April 8th, an incident occurred within the Marine Park area at the easternmost section of Pigeon Point Heritage Park. And despite the immediate response of lifeguards, the assistance of an off-duty nurse, the swift engagement of emergency services, a 7-year-old child, Angelica, tragically succumbed to the injuries sustained. And so again, on behalf of the Tobago House of Assembly, on behalf of the entire island of Tobago, we extend our deepest condolences to her family and loved ones during this incredibly difficult time. This is a deeply tragic event, and of course it underscores a very critical point, and that is that systems, guidelines, and safety frameworks that are in place, that have been in place for years, that were announced and advertised on April 2nd, prior to the start of the Easter period, that these are in place to protect lives, and they are only effective when they are respected and followed. The rules governing the use of our marine park and our marine spaces are actually not optional. They exist to ensure the safety of every resident and visitor, and any unsafe or unauthorized operation of watercraft, particularly within the designated bathing areas, that remains unacceptable. And the Tobago House of Assembly will encourage the TTPS, and in whatever way we can, we will also ensure that perpetrators are brought to justice. In response, Pigeon Point Heritage Park and Book Reef Marine Park were closed today, April 9th, to facilitate investigations, to do safety assessments, and to review operational controls. This matter remains under active investigations. Early this morning, just after midnight, reports have stated that the TTPS took into custody a 32-year-old man connected with the incident, and of course we await the TTPS's communication to the public via the media. The THA, however, remains committed to providing support to the family, as we have done in times past to other families that encountered difficulty here on island. It's about who we are as an island. Tobagonians are just about being good to people. At the same time, we are ensuring that we are strengthening our monitoring and our enforcement, and we are advocating strongly for the TTPS and other agencies of state over which the THA has no control, legal control that is, that they do their jobs and do their jobs efficiently. Unfortunately, the Tobago House of Assembly still does not have any authority over matters in the 6th schedule, and that includes the TTPS. And so we are really dependent on them to do the monitoring and the apprehension of persons who are violating the regulations and maritime laws while operating within the marine park space. And that includes Store Bay, Pigeon Point, No Man's Land, and Boko, and the surrounding areas. It is important to note that the Division of Environment, Climate Resilience and Energy on April 2nd, they took their time. They listed out again and again what the rules of engagements, what those are, and they did their very best trying to appeal to all and sundry to adhere to those regulations to allow for safety. But this is an opportune time for us to say that those with authority in law to actually take action against those who continue to violate the regulations, that they ought to do so. It cannot be that Store Bay operates within walking distance from a police station, and we have the most selling of weed, the hustling and antagonizing of patrons, fights sometimes leading to wounds among perpetrators, and we have no real intervention from those with the authority in law to intervene. So the THA will continue to work with those responsible for crime fighting on the island to ensure that they do their jobs. The incoming Assistant Commissioner of Police, Tobago, I should be meeting with him very soon. He started his tour of duty on the 27th of March, I believe, and this is certainly one of the issues that I intend to raise. Let me be very clear. In the regulations set out for the marine park, jet skis are actually restricted from operating in the marine park. They are only supposed to transit through the marine park en route from point A to point B. But the rules are clear that they are not allowed, they are not supposed to be soliciting or even operating within the park. That framework has been in place long before I became Chief Secretary. In fact, it came about because the THA had a similar encounter in the past, and the Secretary for Legal Affairs might speak to some of the legal issues surrounding that. And now is a horrible time, but an unfortunate time, but I must reiterate that persons must follow the rules. It's for all our safety. But even in the context of this tragedy, it is important to acknowledge that Tobago, in fact, recorded a strong Easter 2026. We saw high visitor arrivals, near full occupancy across various accommodation properties, and of course, significant economic activity across the island. On the domestic air bridge, approximately 11,000 passengers were transported at peak, and that's at the peak period, and that was supported by 502 scheduled flights between March 27 and April 12. These were supplemented by about 38 additional return flights and 16 day-to-day services with a 97% performance and a 99% completion factor. Now, reports from Airport Authority of Trinidad and Tobago reflect that domestic traffic movement for March alone totaled 61,708 passengers. That was supported by 968 aircraft movement. On the sea bridge, more than 21,000 passengers and over 5,800 vehicles were transported across 42 sailings between April 1st and April 7th. At Pigeon Point Heritage Park, where we had that unfortunate incident yesterday, this growth was reflected in visitor activity. Easter Sunday recorded over 3,000 visitors in Pigeon Point, And there's a reason why I'm going through these numbers with you. Easter Sunday had 3,000 visitors, while Easter Monday saw approximately 3,381 visitors. That represents a clear increase when compared to the previous year and certainly over the last 5 years. Overall, visitation trends reinforce the continued strength and appeal of Tobago's premier coastal recreational site. These figures reflect a coordinated and responsive tourism and transportation system supporting one of the busiest periods of the year. But of course, as we move forward, our strategic focus remains clear, that we are building a sustainable year-round tourism product that extends beyond peak periods and that delivers consistent economic and social value. And this approach is reflected in the strength and diversity of our Easter calendar. I must take the opportunity to make mention of some significant community events, such as the Canby Mount Pleasant Community Council Easter Sports and Family Day. I was there with my family, well, my daughter in particular. And then the 98th annual Boko Goat and Crab Races. Once again, that drew strong participation from both residents and visitors, really reinforcing that Easter Tobago is really the place to be. But alongside these events, we must acknowledge Arise and Lemonade. So there was Arise, Lemonade, and Rum Bum. And these activities scored heavily. Arise saw about 1,400 patrons this year. So the gospel and the Christian community came out in large numbers. Lemonade Violet Vines, which was held on April 6th, they had 1,032 patrons. And that included about 482 visitors from Trinidad and international markets. And these are just examples of how strong the product is, how attractive the Tobago tourism product is. Importantly, the Tobago Festivals Commission team, they were present at many of these events, actively promoting upcoming signature festivities such as the Blue Food Festival and the upcoming October Carnival. I must make mention of the fact that our cruise sector is winding down. That's the 2025 to 2026 cruise season is winding down. We recorded 32 confirmed vessel calls, including 7 maiden calls, with a projected visitor passenger arrival ranging between approximately 29,000 and 40,000 visitors. A notable highlight of the season was the maiden call of Brilliance of the Sea, and that vessel arrived in Tobago with 1,700 passengers on board. The visit formed part of the epic carnival experience, with passengers traveling to Tobago following the carnival in Trinidad. And of course, they made their way to the iconic Pigeon Point Heritage Park, again highlighting how important it is for our stakeholders within the Pigeon Point Heritage Park to observe the regulations that were established for your safety and the safety of our visitors. The final cruise call will actually happen tomorrow. So tomorrow we expect the arrival of the Marella Explorer. A roundup report will be furnished by the Secretary of Tourism subsequently. Upcoming, you're reminded that there is Dodds Diving that's taking place on May 23rd. And of course, this will feature 30 to 40 of the world's top athletes in freestyle diving format. You were there last year. You saw how Charleville ran out last year. This year, Charleville will be privileged to host both a fishing tournament followed by Dodds Diving. So they will have about 2 weeks of sustained activities in the Charleville area. In other words, the Tobago tourism product is strong, the sector is growing, our product is competitive, our calendar is expanding, and our partnerships are delivering results. It means that we have to ensure that our visitors and our residents alike remain safe. Safety, compliance, and accountability must remain non-negotiable. And we cannot allow preventable actions to undermine lives, livelihoods, or even the reputation of our destination. I was actually in Pigeon Point about 2 or 3 weeks ago, talking to some of the stakeholders there. We were just liming, and I was saying to them, I was begging them to not allow an incident to happen before actually taking stock of how they operate within the space. And unfortunately, an incident occurred yesterday. That's regrettable, for which, despite not being complicit, we are sorry, and for which we have extended sympathies, but more than that, we continue to extend the support, even as we look forward to growth in the tourism sector. Most definitely in the coming weeks, this will be beyond just a conversation that we are having now, but it will include measurable actions that one can expect to see from the THA, but more so that we expect to see from the TTPS and those under the 6th schedule remit of the central government. So at this time, thank you, and I hand you back to Press Secretary Ms. Chambers.
Thank you, Honorable Augustine, for your report. I now hand over to Councillor Adana Joseph Wallace, Secretary of the Division of Legal Affairs, to address you. Councillor Wallace.
Good afternoon. I don't have a prepared text, but I would like to use this opportunity to express how indeed sorry we are as a Tobago House of Assembly for the incident that occurred yesterday. I want to say particularly that as a parent, I just cannot fathom the unimaginable horror that the Jogis are experiencing at this time. It is a nightmare for any parent. It is a nightmare for anyone who has a loved one. And in echoing the Chief's sentiments, the Tobago House of Assembly continues resolute in providing support in the ways that we can, because that is what Tobagoanians do, and this circumstance is no different. Of course, I remain here for any questions you may have for me.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph Wallace. We now accept questions from members of the media. As usual, once you have a question to pose, you indicate by raising your virtual hand. We have one reporter in-house with us from Guardian Media Limited. His hand is raised. Good afternoon, Stefan. 2 questions in the first instance. May I add?
Good afternoon, Chief. Can you give us an update on the condition of the injured relatives? Are they still hospitalized?
I'm going to be very guarded in how much I disclose, because certainly the family will want some elements to remain private and confidential to them. The father of the young lady remains in our care, hospital care that is, and the rest of the family, the extended family, inclusive of the wife and sibling, continue to receive support from the THA.
Also, you mentioned the advisory put out by the division outlining the regulations going into the Easter period. You mentioned also the police enforcement. Given the THA doesn't have the teeth to enforce these regulations, were there any conversations with the police heading into the Easter period to collaborate to enforce these regulations?
These are conversations that we have had prior to this Easter, that we have had several times in the past, on and off season. And while the THA is constrained, because as you may be aware, in November of 2020, we did send down to Parliament a bill, a marine park bill, hoping to manage marine parks around the island, not just what exists at Buko, but other marine spaces. And that has not seen the light of day in the Parliament as yet. And we continue to insist that that bill be taken up by the current central government, although they weren't in power then. So despite being constrained in our inability to pass laws or our inability to police the regulations ourselves, there are other laws for which the police can in fact enforce. And we have seen it on moments. We have seen at moments where the police and the Maritime Division will go together. They will inspect the boats, they will check on the numbers on the vessel to ensure that they're adhering to how much they are licensed to carry, etc. and etc. And this is a good time for me to say to those who operate in the space, I really don't want to hear a single word of complaint from any of you the next time the police or the Maritime Division is there. Because we see the videos. We see them up on TikTok and Facebook about how they think they're being harassed and why the police is there now. And I don't think the police and Maritime Division should be listening to those complaints. The stakeholders will always operate in their own selfish best interest. But the agencies of state, like the police and the Maritime Division, they have to operate in the best interest of the entire state. And I think more can be done and more should be done. I have seen the complaints from visitors who go to Store Bay about how the touters, I don't know what you want to call them, those who sell the tickets, how they operate. How sometimes they're jumping in front of the visitor, they're smoking in the open, trading of drugs in the open. But there's a police station across the road. And that's why sometime, I think it was earlier this year or last year, I said how funny it is. We arrive at October Carnival and I'm coming out of A&R Robinson International Terminal and the police is there doing a roadblock because there's Carnival in Tobago. What happened with the rest of the year? And yes, the police are worthwhile partners and we support the TTPS. Don't get me wrong, we support them, and the THA supports them sometimes by giving them resources that we are not duty bound in law to give to them. But what this says to me is that the continuous vigilance and monitoring that should be happening, that does not always happen. And we want it to happen. We're insisting that it happens. And that those who operate in the space, they're not in charge of the space. They're not in charge of the space. And so the TTPS under the 6th schedule and the other laws that grant them powers of arrest and the powers to maintain law and order, they must do their part.
Thank you, Stefan. Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News. Good afternoon, Elizabeth.
Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of CCN TV6, we want to offer our condolences to the Jolly family with respect to this incident. I know the Chief Secretary spoke about enforcement. I don't know if, in terms of the vessel, I know some time back, Mr. Chief, you spoke to the acquisition of a vessel to do patrols in the marine area. If you could give us an update as to where is this vessel at this time? And also, if it is in terms of situations like these or even in bumper seasons or on a continuous basis, is it that the Tobago House of Assembly can ask for the assistance of Coast Guard vessels to do patrols in the various areas in terms of the marine park, etc.?
Thank you, Ms. Williams. I can answer the two questions in one. You know, what's interesting is when I offered my boat, the then Minister of National Security and his team went out to say they want my little fishing boat, right? But they have nothing, right? And even if they could swim properly, they have nothing to do their jobs in the space. And it's unfortunate because a half a loaf is better than none. It's better than none. And it can't be that we are waiting for a protracted period to have vessels available to do the patrol. We just have to use what is available in the space and use it now and use it wisely. That's important. In terms of the Coast Guard bringing vessels during peak periods, one would expect that is something that they do. I don't know that that should be something the THA should request. The THA is given responsibility over matters in the 5th schedule. There is a 6th schedule for which national security falls, and that remains with the central government. So if I have to do my work and then call you to do your work, then it's better I take all the work and do it myself. It's better Tobago become an independent state if that's what I have to do. But we're not. Nor are we advocating that. And if we are saying that we are going to have a unitary state, and within this calendar year, hopefully, we will get the autonomy that we want, and that there are some areas of responsibility that remains with the central government, I don't think I should have to call anybody to remind them to do that. That should not be how we operate in this space. The question then must be asked, then what do they do? What do they do? But it's a given we have large numbers of people, and if we have large numbers of people, then the duty of care must mean that those with responsibility for security must find themselves there and be available, even if all they do is walk the beaches. That is absolutely critical. So we are going to go at it again, Ms. Williams, and we are going to provide whatever help we can provide, notwithstanding it not being our responsibility at this time. We have spoken about the localized police force and the responsibilities those will take. That has not gone to Parliament as yet. 2 Fridays ago, that came up in the conversation, in the discussion and on the agenda I had with the Prime Minister at that meeting about 2 Fridays ago as well. So we are pushing in that direction. But while we push in that direction, I don't want us to also negate the fact that those who operate within this space have a duty of care and responsibility in ensuring that they operate in a manner that is safe for their customers, safe for the operators, and safe for everyone. That's where the first responsibility lies. That's where the first responsibility lies. In fact, the police should have no work to do, because everybody observing the regulations and the maritime laws and abiding by the insurance policies that they have signed on to. So the police should really have no work to do. But I hope the media, and I hope the media is listening to this, because very often you all give voice to some people who don't want to abide by any rules, who want to do their own thing. So they're always up and down Facebook cussing us the bad word because they vex that rules in place. And you'll give voice to them because it is always a slow news day in Tobago. Right? It's always a slow news day in Tobago because the government ain't doing nothing crazy and wild to get all excited. So you find the foolishness and you give them a voice and empower them into thinking that the wrong that they do somehow is right. And I'm being very clear in my mind. I don't care who among them operators vex. And I've said to the secretaries responsible that I tired of meeting, so I'm not going to meet with nobody. Lay down the rules that they have to follow by, or they cannot operate in spaces owned by the THA. Full stop. Who vex, lost. They could pack up their boat, pack up their jet ski and go home with it and let it dry rot, as far as I am concerned. But it cannot be that people continue to operate without any repercussions whatsoever. And we had an incident that occurred, and the operator, as far as information we have, fled the scene. Come on. That does not look good for the entire island. The entire island is now pained. The entire country is now pained. This is a child who has not had the benefits of life, full life. So much potential gone. So much potential gone. I could only think of my own daughter. I mean, I have one seed. Imagine if that gone in that way. I don't know if Madhouse could pick me up, for sure. And I'm simply saying that people must be responsible. And at the end of the day, Ms. Williams, rules, police, Coast Guard, boat, guns, cameras, everything could be in place. At the end of the day, the people who claim to love this island and who claim that, because of your love for this paradise, you want to earn from it and give back to it, you have a responsibility to protect it and protect the people who come to this island and who live on this island. You have a duty. I'm sure you don't expect the chief secretary or a secretary to go down there on a boat to tell people how to behave. I'm sure you don't expect the police to be there 24/7 or the Coast Guard to be there 24/7. So at some point, we have to put the responsibility right back on those who operate in this space. They have a responsibility to operate in a manner that reflects international best practice. They and obey the laws and the regulations set out.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your questions. Jewel Green, Tobago Updates.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. Good afternoon, Chief Secretary and Secretary Joseph Wallace. I do have a question for Chief Secretary, and the question is based on the reference to support for the family. What type of support, what's the nature of the support that the THA is offering in terms of maybe counseling, maybe to take little Angelica back home, to stay further in Tobago until the autopsy is done, if one is being done. And for the Secretary, Joseph Wallace, in terms of the autonomy guidance from Professor Hamid Ghani, we're looking at the bill that the Chief Secretary mentioned was stalled in 2020. Where are we now? Is it going to be fast-tracked? Has Professor Ghani given his support or, guidance already? Has that been looked at in terms of making sure now that we're able to have a bill that gives the THA legal teeth to deal with these types of issues where enforcement and monitoring needs to be done? And also in terms of the 2007 incident, we're feeling a bit of deja vu in Tobago, and we're wondering in terms of liability, is the THA looking at a similar situation in terms of liability, and perhaps if the THA is looking to settle with the family?
All right, so let me start with your first question. And part of the question you asked of Secretary Joseph Wallace, I will answer. That's the part related to Professor Ghani. And the Secretary will answer the other question about liability and deja vu, because I'm sure she would have spent some time reviewing that particular case. In terms of support for the family, I'm not sure if the public is aware, but at the Division of Finance, we in fact have a vote and a line item in our budget that we prepare for incidents such as these, so we provide support. It's not new. When we had the drowning last year, we provided support. When we had the issue with the shark bite, we provided support, and that support can range from anything which includes paying for accommodation to remain on island, to paying for flights out of island, provision of counseling, medical care, is just something we do. Tourism is an important industry for us, and because it is important for us, every fiscal year we set aside monies to ensure that if any eventuality, any accident, and it may not even be a cause of human action. It might be caused by natural disaster. There was nothing the THA could have done about the shark. We didn't put the shark in the water. That wasn't something we did wrong or anybody in Tobago did wrong, but we provided support. So the provision of support is just standard operation for us, extremely standard operation. And so that will come in different ways. It's a matter that is ongoing, it's unfolding as we speak. And so it might be premature to detail all of the support that they have and will get, because the matter is unfolding as we speak. But rest assured that the THA, given Tobago's culture with how we treat people, will be providing support. We have started already. Secondly, in terms of the role of Professor Ghani, I'm not sure if you are aware, in 1992, as they were preparing for update to Act 37 of 1980, the two committees were formed. At that time, the central government formed a constitutional committee chaired by Sir Ellis Clark, and the Tobago House of Assembly formed a committee that was being chaired directly by Lennox Denoon, who became Chief Secretary in and around that time. On the Tobago committee, the committee run by the THA, Professor Ghani was one of those on that committee. So Professor Ghani is not new to this at all. In the conversations with the Prime Minister, we decided that since he was a part of the former conversations that actually led to Act 40 of 1996, and given his role in the social sciences at the University of the West Indies, that professors should be asked to be a part of this process and guide this process. I had intended actually that today was going to be the day to announce those who will take the lead in the Constituent Assembly, or what the blueprint refers to as the People's Parliament, and to announce the date, the start date of operations. That announcement will come next week. Be reminded, however, that it is a twofold operation. While my office at the Office of the Chief Secretary is taking the lead on the Constituent Assembly and the public discussions, Secretary Adana Joseph Wallace and her team across at Legal Affairs, they are taking the lead on drafting of legislation. Those are two separate, two distinct functions that are needed. Drafting, I'm sure Secretary Wallace may want to give some information about what that constitutes, but that's a specialty in law. In fact, you can't just pick up a regular lawyer and say, come and draft. That's a specialty skill, something that has to be taught and learned, and so we have to have that with us. The only thing I could say to that is we have the commitment from the Chief Parliamentary Council that a representative from the Chief Parliamentary Council will be a part of the drafting team. So by the time what is drafted here in Tobago goes to the Parliament in Trinidad, it will meet the litmus test, so to speak, of what is required for going to the Parliament. I'll ask Secretary Wallace to talk about the issue of liability. Certainly, we have had no discussion about any settlement, and I don't think that's a matter for consideration at this time, but I ask Secretary Wallace to speak to that.
Thank you, Chief, and good afternoon, Joel Green. Thank you for your question. I think it's really premature to go in the direction of liability. At this juncture, the focus is on the fact that there is an investigation that the TTPS is engaged in, which means that it is, for all intents and purposes, a criminal investigation. There has been no claim filed against the Tobago House of Assembly or even any mention of anything like that. Notwithstanding, our support at this time is the support that the family may need in whatever way or form is required, not in terms of a settlement or any kind of thing, because of, again, we notwithstanding the fact that the TTPS is doing its investigations, we are doing our own internal investigations so that we are aware of the circumstances of the incident, right? That's the first thing. And in terms of 2007, you said deja vu, so I believe you're speaking about the Barry Lazo case, again, involving an incident at Pigeon Point. One of the things that is not deja vu for us is the fact that we learned from that experience. And the THA learned that it is responsible for the particular space with regard to the parameters of the space that it is responsible for. It also learned that it has a duty of care and what is reasonable care in the circumstances. And the Tobago House of Assembly has made every effort to ensure that it has met the parameters of the law with regard to reasonable care and executing its duty of care if it has any at all. So while it may be deja vu from the context or from the perspective of it being the same site, it is not deja vu in other respects because, as I said, we have learned our lessons from that time. Right?
Thank you. Thank you, Jewel, for your questions. We'll take the final 2 questions from Whitfield Turner.
Good evening, Very good afternoon to the Chief and to the Legal Affairs Secretary. Since you're talking about the last set of questions, let me go through them quickly. We're talking tourism and the numbers that we saw this past Easter weekend. I was wondering, Chief, if you have any update for us in terms of the opening of the new airport terminal and more specifically in terms of marketing Destination Tobago to have direct international flights here. Are we likely to see anything like that coming shortly after the formal opening of the new terminal? And while you're at it, if you can provide any update on the Seabridge side of things in terms of whether you have a return to service date for the TNT Spirit.
The last one first, I have no information about a return to service for the TNT Spirit. I can try to get that information for you. With regards to provisions to direct flight, we have some ongoing negotiations, some very promising ones. I'll prefer not to jinx it at this time or to disclose too much at this time. But we had meetings, for example, with Caribbean Airlines up to last week. And those meetings, the positioning of Caribbean Airlines, I can tell you, is one where the company is going in a direction that is a lot more amiable to Tobago's tourism needs. We felt a greater measure of respect in the room. We felt seen and heard. We felt as though Caribbean Airlines was finally listening and is willing to facilitate the growth of the tourism sector in Tobago in the provision of direct flights. And together with Caribbean Airlines, we are working on some beautiful projects that we hope will begin its rollout early in July this year. So that's all I can say on that for now. And of course, we are having the conversations beyond the Caribbean Airlines because we are insistent that in our scheme of work in this calendar year is that the island sees an increase in direct flights to the island. With regards to the opening of the new terminal, the Tobago House of Assembly is currently working very closely with the Airports Authority. As you should know, item number 16 on the 5th schedule lists airports as one of the functions of the Tobago House of Assembly. And we are working on the build-out of the terminal on the inside. We are insistent, and the Airports Authority has agreed with us that those service providers in the old airport, the old terminal, and I'm using the term old loosely here, but in the existing terminal, you're talking about those that sell the local sweets, those that operate restaurants and so on. The Airport Authority has agreed that they will all be given space in the new terminal. Given that the new terminal is really just stark, it is really just seating as well as equipment for scanning and so on. We are assisting right now as we speak with billing out the facilities, because we don't expect them to come and throw down a table and a piece of tablecloth and drop some Benny ball and tambourine on it. The standard has to be raised to another level. So we want to ensure that the first impression of the visitor on arriving at ANR Robinson International is one for which all of Tobago can be proud. And so the THA is getting involved in that regard. The THA is also getting involved with regards to completing the road infrastructure to the new terminal. I did lament before that the Friday before the so-called opening or commissioning of the terminal, really a partial opening, I really don't know what it was, but the Friday before that occurred, I met with the then line minister and PS, and at that time we were being asked to do the road, but no additional lands were acquired. I think we have figured out a way to do it while acquiring minimal amounts of additional lands, and we are pushing on that. That will be absolutely critical. I want you in the media to go and look and see where the current roundabout is for the new terminal. It is oddly placed. It's not placed in Strawberry Local Road where it should go. And ask yourself how we're managing the traffic along that Strawberry Local Road for the new terminal, going east and west. And so those are things that must happen in order to facilitate the opening of the new terminal. We were in fact given a date by the Airport Authority that I don't wish to disclose here now, because I suspect that that date might not be very practical given what is required to be done in the new terminal, still required to be done. But we are working as hard as possible to ensure that we could get it up and running very, very soon. As a matter of fact, one thing that is clear in our mind is that we will not approach the next peak season for international arrivals without the terminal being opened for operation. I also want to say that the terminal might be open and there might still be some odds and ends being fixed on the inside even after it's opened. But I want you to bear with us, because we are pushing as hard and as quickly as possible to get all the works done. I will make a request of Airports Authority to see if they will give me permission, grant me permission to perhaps do a media tour in it, in its current state, so you can get a full explanation of what's needed on the interior. But yes, know that we are working quite feverishly to come to that place of operationalizing the ANR Robinson International new terminal.
Thanks for your questions, Whitfield. So we actually have time to accept one more question per reporter. Stefan Nicholas.
Chief, what can the THA do to eliminate the touting behavior surrounding this industry? It's not something new. I was speaking to an operator today and asking the question whether someone, if they're inebriated and they want to rent a jet ski, would the person still be granted that opportunity? And they said once they have the money, it will take place. How do you, as in terms of education?
Hold on. So who spoke to an operator?
I spoke to someone in the industry and I asked that particular question.
And they're brave enough to tell you once they have the money, they will.
And the person said that, yes, it does happen.
So, no.
So, in terms of the education, what can the THA do to let people understand this is not
Again,
a hustle? And
hold on. So let me say this. And I wouldn't say it's not a hustle. because there is a time and a place for hustle and for hustler mentality. That may not be all negative based on what it is. And I'm not saying that this is unique to Tobago. If you go to the pyramids in Egypt now, there are touters there trying to get you to pay them extra money. You try to go up by the Redeemer statue in Brazil, they are there. You go to Paris, you have some there. So anywhere around the world, you have an attraction that is popular, that is considered beautiful. That sort of subculture develops. So it's not unique to Tobago, and I don't want it to be projected as though Tobago is in this unique space where people tout and hustle. It happens all around the world. I have seen it with white people, black people, Indian people, Chinese people, all ethnicities, so it's not unique. Where I have a problem is that sometimes there isn't a care for life and safety, and it can't be just about the money. We have, as I've said before, we have had several meetings. We have had training. Prior to me coming into office, the THA set up an actual space in Stobie where all visitors were to go to a single space, a single booth, to pay for their tickets regardless of which craft they decide, which boat they decide to go on. You know what has happened? The boat operators, they leave the facility to rot away. They're not using it, and everybody decide to be outside and jump in the face of every visitor and hustle them for money and to take a ride. We made some decisions today as an executive, and I gave some directives, particularly to the Secretary of Tourism, the Assistant Secretary, Assistant in Tourism, Assistant Secretary Tate from the Office of the Chief Secretary, to Secretary Henry from Environment, of some actions. And I want to assure you that within the next 2 weeks, you will see some noticeable changes. I'm not at liberty of disclosing them now, but you will see some noticeable changes within the next 2 weeks. We will use every muscle we have, and notwithstanding being limited in many regards legally, we will use whatever legal authority we can find to go after individuals. As a matter of fact, I want to go on record as saying that I instructed the Secretary for Legal Affairs to look at whether or not the THA can bring legal, or rather civil suits against those perpetrators. Because the law says that the THA is a body corporate, which means the THA can sue and be sued. And the THA can act as a company. And my instruction is to look at where people have violated our regulations for how they ought to operate within spaces owned by the THA, such as Pigeon Point Heritage Park and Stobie, and within the 6 nautical miles measuring from the high water mark outward, that is assigned to the THA. And we are strongly considering taking legal action against them. We don't have authority to take action in terms of going through the route of criminal court with them, but we can take civil action against them, and we very much intend to do so, to the extent where we will bankrupt some of them who don't know how to behave. We'll go after them and bankrupt them if they don't know how to behave, because we cannot keep having meetings with Tie-Dye Talk Shop. How much more talk we gonna talk? How much more press conferences we will have? How much more times we will have to come and bemoan the fact that people don't know how to behave? Last year, the then Secretary for Tourism was going off the island because she applied for some leave. The poor lady had to miss her flight to show up at Gibson Jetty until I could get there because somebody drowned there. We had to manage the media and manage the PR around that, because tourism is very much an international facing industry. I don't think we should talk anymore. I don't think we should have any more meetings. And I am not wasting time with consultations. Right? And I'm saying that plainly. So I know the stakeholders, they will vex because they will think that rules are just being hammered down on them without them getting a chance to come to the table. But they have had enough chances to come to the table. They could go and make 1 million TikToks now and cuss as much bad word as they want. Nobody could cuss bad word more than my father. So bad word don't faze me at all. I grew up with that, right? My father is bad word king. So that doesn't faze me one bit. The THA must do what the THA must do now, using the limited powers and authority we have in law to go after those who will not listen. Because I don't know that we could continue having meetings and consulting. Assistant Secretary Percy met with them just about last month. They had a meeting at the pavilion in Pigeon Point. Just about last month or so he met with them, discussing the same thing, how to behave. I don't understand. Let me tell you, and for those looking on from around the world, the real Tobago does not behave like that. The real Tobago I know is a place where the perfect stranger could come into your house, even with their shoes on, and sit down and have a meal and have a cold beverage, and if you like the food, they get something to toast too. That is the Tobago I know. We know that kind of Tobago, and I have no issue with a man getting a hustle or a man saying, look, I have to be as persuasive as possible to get them to choose my service, but there is a limit, and it cannot be at the expense of safety. Here you asking me, you ask someone in the industry, if a man come there and they look like they're clearly drunk or they're high and they can't manage, will you give them a jet ski? And they had the guts to tell you, well, once they have their money, they will get a jet ski. And I want to ask the organizers looking on, do you really think this is THA fault? Think about it. So what should happen? Should we cancel everybody and the THA buy all the jet skis and buy all the boats and hire workers like we hire daily rated workers, or maybe 10 on 10 off, and let them go and operate THA owned boats and THA owned jet skis in the marine park? That makes no sense. There is a room for the private sector, but the private sector must know how to behave. Simple as that.
Jewel Green, Tobago Updates.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. Chief Secretary, in terms of the restriction for jet skis operating in the reef areas, is the THA looking to issue an outright ban on jet skis, notwithstanding the existing restriction?
It is actually something being considered now. As a matter of fact, I was doing some research and I saw a complaint some years ago because there was an outright ban, a full ban. And those in the sector were complaining that they were not, if I could find the article, that they were not consulted 15 years ago to the date. 15 years ago. And I saw this from a Trinidad Express report 15 years ago, where they were complaining about not being consulted on the ban. The THA then being responsible and saying, look, we understand that there's room for private sector innovation and growth and injection, and we want people to earn a living. The THA can't employ everybody. So the THA and the secretary spoke to it. Learning from the court case, that's why it's not deja vu in that context. Learning from the court case, put down the demarcation, set out the zones, that is safe. Put up signage, right? You go in Pigeon Point right now. There are signs in Pigeon Point right now as we speak. And I know every one of them could read, because you have a good education system, and our education system in Tobago don't produce illiterates. They could read, so I know they know the sign, right? So the signs are there. They are aware of the zones. The areas are properly demarcated, which is common practice around the globe. It's not new to Tobago, because we appreciate that a beach has several users. We have the bathers, we have those who want to enjoy some water sports, we have the boat operators, we have the fisher folk, we have those that just want to sunbathe, we want those who just want to go and have a meal and watch the sunset and don't really want to get their toes wet. We have those who might just drive in to take a photo and drive back out. Several users, and everyone has to be accommodated. I even saw something recently, and this is unrelated, Ms. Green. I saw something recently where someone complaining because Pigeon Point told them they can't have the fiberglass all over the place. And I said, well, what madness is this? So you want to fix boat all over Pigeon Point as opposed to operating in a confined area and packing up properly the extra fiberglass? And I'm asking, what happens if one of the persons making the noise running a reef boat? What happens if one of his visitors, international visitors, gets scratched or infected by the fiberglass? How would he respond to that? How you gonna look to the THA to now respond to it? There must be rules of engagement, and they must be enforced. And I am appealing to Tobagonians, and I love the boat operators down there. They are my people. I love all of them down there. I tried before exec council this morning to call Pussin, but I didn't get Pussin. Right? I called him Pussin whole morning to talk to him because I saw a missed call from him. So they are my people. I know them by their nickname. I believe that they ought to run and operate in the industry and earn from the industry. We don't want to take that away from them. We're not saying that we don't want them to earn any money or to not have the visitors have fun. We're not saying we don't want people to play soca music or reggae or to dance on the boat or dance in the water. But what we're saying is we have to protect the environment, the natural ecosystem. We have to protect lives and ensure it's done safely. And once those two things happen, then you have a whole heap of money to earn. But when you destroy the very industry that is feeding you, then now you're on my doorstep, you're by the doorstep of every area begging for a work when you could actually be self-sufficient. So now it's time for some tough love for some of them. You know, when you have children, sometimes you will talk, and then you will try other measures. You might say, okay, you can't leave the house, you will go on some time out, you try other measures. Sometimes when that doesn't work, you have to take out one, send them to pick a little whip. My mother used to send me to pick the whip myself and bring it back. And then you get a nice little flogging with the whip. You understand that you're misbehaving. So it's time for some tough love to ensure that they are whipped into shape so that they can run a sustainable industry. It will do all of us a great deal of good if that happens.
And our final question from Whitfield Turner.
Thank you again. Related to tourism, but slightly different, Chief Secretary, this is a matter you were very vocal on when it occurred a couple of weeks ago. I'm talking about the vandalism of water assets across the island. And recently we saw those persons who were held in connection with that, they were released without charge. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that you are willing to share with members of the public.
Only to say that I have some measured disappointment. I have no real intelligence about the matter, save and except knowing who were arrested by the police. But I don't have any intelligence beyond that. My disappointment only stems from the fact that I really want the culprits to pay for it. I'm not sure how much evidence the police actually has, because you would appreciate that these facilities operate out there in the wild. No camera systems, no physical security. Where it's fenced, it's not locked away, and I did make a call for tighten the security around these facilities. I I really would hope that the culprits can be brought to bear some responsibility for what they did, because it cost the state quite a lot to have the electricals reinstalled in all of these places. But I think the larger point of note is that we have to absolutely have greater measure of security around public utilities in the space. It is critical. Having said that, just a couple things quickly. Once again, I want to thank all of those who have been involved in terms of the response to the tragedy. The nurse on the beach that volunteered, the lifeguards, including the lifeguard trainees. You will note that between the last time we had an incident in Pigeon Point to now, that there's an increase in the number of lifeguards. We have some new trainees there. They have passed the initial phases of being trained. Their t-shirts will actually write trainee, although they are wearing the same yellow and red uniform. They did have, in fact, some equipment there that was not there the last time we had an incident. And we note everything from when the call arrived to the ambulance center, the EMTs, and their response. We want to also thank the doctors and nurses at the hospital who have been extremely caring to our patients, and all those who are around, general bystanders, those who try to help. We are really, really grateful for what you have done. Again, it is with deepest of sympathies that we really sorry that this has happened to the family. We wish young Angelica was here with us today. And this is the real result of people not acknowledging their duty of care while exploiting the industry that they're in. And that we insist must change. There are two other things quickly I want to bring to your attention. The first is that World Transportation Day is on the 17th of April 2026. And on that day, World Transportation Day, I'm advised by Secretary Pantin that the buses, meaning the PTSC buses, and those offering public transportation will all operate free on that day, as a way of reminding you how important public transportation is. And I want to end by acknowledging and congratulating our young athletes. Trinidad and Tobago won 35 medals at Carifta and came in second among the countries, second to Jamaica, of course. But we will get there. We'll get there. But I think the takeaway lesson for us is that 15 of those 35 medals are from Tobago students, are from young Tobagonians. 15 of the 35. And that is an acknowledgement of the fact that we have the talents here on island. We will continue to work with our athletes. We will continue to give them all the support we can. We have been supporting, and we note that there is an increase in the number of our athletes who are going out to train and study. And I'm talking about from the secondary school level in Jamaica, and we are supporting them in doing so, because we want the very best for them and we want them to be competitive. And so to an extent, we are also grateful to those who are being given opportunities to go live and study in Jamaica. I'm grateful to the parents who are brave enough to send their children away from them. When I was that age, I can't fathom my mother wanting to send me out. She didn't even want me to leave to go as a big man, much more as a high schooler. But we are really happy that parents are giving their children that opportunity. and we continue to support them. So congratulations again to all 35, on all 35 medals. Congratulations on all. Congratulations, special congratulations to those from within the Tobago space. And not just the athletes, but the parents, to the coaches, to the teachers, and to the schools that ably support these athletes. So thank you very much, congratulations, and thank you again.
So I'm seeing that we do not have any more raised hands. So as a result, that's how we'll end this week's press conference. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember to stay updated. You can follow us on Office of the Chief Secretary on Facebook and on Instagram at OCS_THE. We'd see you again next week, Thursday, for another media briefing as the Tobago House of Assembly remains committed to transparency and keeping the public updated. So thanks again for joining us. See you next week. I'm Davia Chambers. Have a great afternoon.